We have the latest NHL trade rumors to discuss today, including teams like the Calgary Flames, the Washington Capitals, and of course the Vegas Golden Knights after losing. What moves will they make, and could they possibly jump into the Jack Eichel sweepstakes? We also have some more news regarding some signings and other NHL news as well. We'll jump into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, of course, as I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. First up, I want to acknowledge a couple of quick NHL signings here. Now, the Dallas Stars have signed pending RFA Rhett Gardner. Rhett Gardner gets a 2-year deal with a $750,000 average annual value. In year one, it's a two-way deal, but it is a one-way deal in year number 2. So obviously he'll be guaranteed NHL money at that point. And we also seen the LA Kings re-sign RFA Blake Lizotte as well. He gets a 1-year deal at $800,000. The other piece of news we found out yesterday as well was longtime NHL player and one of the legends of the game, Mark Messier, is getting into the media business. He's going to be joining ESPN. They've hired him as an analyst. Of course, Wayne Gretzky is going to work for TNT, so the longtime teammates and longtime competitors against each other for part of their careers as well will be in very similar type roles for competing networks. It's going to be interesting to get Messier in that kind of role and see what kind of personality and opinions he can bring to the broadcast, and we'll see how these two NHL legendary players making their media debuts this fall. Now, of course, we saw one of the semifinal series come to an end last night with the Montreal Canadiens defeating the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 6 in overtime to send them to the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1993. First time a Canadian team has made it to the final since 2011. In the early 2000s, Canada did have a good streak of teams making it to the final, with numerous teams making appearances with Vancouver in 2011. We had the Senators, Oilers, and Flames all make it there earlier in the 2000s as well. So now Montreal's back for the first time in 28 years. So we'll see what they can do. We don't know who their opponent will be yet. Game 7 goes tonight between the Lightning and the New York Islanders. And so certainly the Habs were celebrating hardcore last night. It was funny watching Marc Bergevin bounce around in a box up in the Bell Center, going crazy after the Habs scored in overtime from a huge goal from Arturi Lehkonen on a beautiful pass from Philip Deneau. Of course, Philip Deneau continued to celebrate post-game, doing his post-game media, eating some pizza. You got to think there's a pizza deal coming for the guy here at some point. Now, of course, it was a huge game last night. Only 3,500 fans in the building, but it was packed outside of the Bell Center. To me, I would think it's a safer situation being indoors than outdoors when it comes to any of the COVID protocols or anything that you might be concerned about in that regard. Really hoping that the Quebec government will open things up and allow a much larger number of fans in the building for the games for the Stanley Cup final. We know they're going to have at least 2 games, games 3 and 4. After that, it will depend on where the series is at, of course, but still, it's an absolutely huge accomplishment. The Habs have been playing the role of underdogs the entire playoffs. They continue to surprise people, and they really shouldn't be surprising people anymore. They've had great contributions from a variety of players, terrific goaltending from Carey Price, and it's nice to see guys like Price and Weber, especially, a little bit elder statesmen in the game who've had long, really successful careers, get their first chance to play for a Stanley Cup. And of course, Vegas has been a real strong team as long as they've been in the league here. It's 3 semifinal appearances, including a Stanley Cup final appearance in their 4 years in the NHL, but they haven't gotten over the hump yet to get that elusive Stanley Cup. So I know listening to a lot of the post-game interviews, Mark Stone put a lot of the blame on himself, but the Vegas forwards could not get going. Cole Caulfield had as many goals in the entire series as the entire Vegas forward group. The power play was atrocious. Vegas had the worst power play of all the playoff teams. Montreal's penalty kill was amazing. I think they're at 30 or 31 in a row or whatever the number is now. And clearly Price has been their best penalty killer, but their top 4D have been pretty solid and a huge part of why they are where they are. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of Stanley Cup final we get. It'll either be Habs versus Islanders or Habs versus Lightning, and we'll find that out tonight. The weekend will be quiet. There won't be any hockey Saturday or Sunday. The Stanley Cup final does get underway Monday evening, and like I said, the Habs will be on the road in either the Coliseum in Long Island or in Amalie Arena in Tampa. So we'll have to wait and see where things go from here. Now, of course, as you probably noticed by now, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm wearing one of my Top Shelf Hockey new hoodies here. Decided to bring some samples in to show you more on camera. Very comfortable, love the fit, and if you want to get yours, you'll notice there's a merch shelf down below here. And if, of course, reminder, if you're a membership holder of the channel, you do automatically get a discount on any merch. And of course, if you're watching on mobile, you won't see the direct link below the video here for the merchandise, but you can certainly go onto the channel page and you'll see the tab for that. And any merchandise that you do buy does certainly help support the channel, and of course, it's always greatly appreciated. Before we jump into the remaining trade rumors here, I do also just want to pause for a second and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping into all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. When it comes to the trade talk today, I want to touch on the Calgary Flames. Darren Dreger, as the latest radio hit, was indicating that he's hearing a lot about the Flames and that the name of Sean Monahan keeps coming up quite a bit. Now, Monahan's a guy we've talked about on a few occasions here. Of course, he's a former 30-goal scoring center. Of course, playing with Johnny Gaudreau's been a good fit, where Gaudreau's been the playmaker. Monahan's been more of the shot-first type of center. And obviously, the Flames are looking to shake things up. Now, we've talked a bit recently about Matthew Tkachuk, and of course, as I mentioned, I don't really think there's a whole lot to those rumors, but there is some who thought that Tkachuk wanted out of Calgary. If I'm the Calgary Flames, that's not the move I'm making. I'm looking to shake up the older part of this core, which is Gaudreau and Monahan. At least one of those two guys likely to get traded. Of course, Gaudreau's entering the final year of his contract, so to me, you either consider extending him or trading him, and one of those things need to be done this offseason. But certainly, given the need around some teams for a center iceman, especially a guy who can score goals at the rate that Monahan has in his young career, then I would think he'll have a fair bit of interest around the NHL. I know he was previously linked to a team like Ottawa, where he would likely become their number one center, or at least number one, number two, depending on how they want to position their lines here. And clearly, they're a team with a lot of young players who could use a bit of an older player like him to guide them, but he's certainly not an old player by any means, but certainly more experienced than most of the guys playing in their first, second, or third years. But according to Dreger, Monahan's name is heavily out there and is very, very likely to get moved this offseason. And listening to the latest 31 Thoughts podcast from Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick earlier today, they were touching on the fact of the Dave Haxtell hiring in Seattle and wonder what that might mean for some of their selections at the expansion draft, or possibly even some moves that could happen as side deals or trades as well. I mean, Merrick brought up the idea, maybe some former players that he's worked with in the past. I know there was mention about Travis Dermott maybe being a potential fit instead of a guy like Kerfoot from the Maple Leafs. Clearly, they're going to get to take a player there. Dermott and Kerfoot could both be available. Many felt that Kerfoot might be the more likely guy to go. But you know what? Looking at it from the Seattle standpoint, Haxtell obviously worked closely with the D in Toronto, so he may be more fond of Dermott. Dermott comes with a cheaper contract. He's not signed right now, but he'd be certainly making less than what Kerfoot is. So it helps keep the dollars down, helps add a lot more defensive depth, and it might be the way that we see the Kraken go here. Of course, they're going to be required to take so many forwards and defensemen in this draft, and it really boils down to who they like over others. But certainly given the history there, Merrick is wondering maybe if Dermott might be the target. And he also brought up TJ Oshie. Of course, TJ Oshie is from Washington State, so the Seattle area would be like home to him. And at the same time, he worked closely with Haxtell because he played at UND where Dave Haxtell was used to coach. So he certainly would be a very familiar face and somebody he's used to working with, somebody who obviously worked with him younger in his career. I mean, Oshie does come with a bit of term, and there has been some question marks whether or not the Capitals will protect Oshie or not. They may have to leave one or two bigger contracts open for the Kraken to possibly choose from, but we don't know exactly what their plans are. And if it's not done that way. It could be done as more of a side deal. I mean, I know Oshie's made comments before that he signed long-term in Washington, and his intent was to continue playing there and likely finish out his career. But I do have to think as well that he would kind of somewhat welcome a move home. So we'll have to see, because obviously, there's only so much leverage the player has. If they get traded or they get picked in the expansion draft, that's not really much they can do about. So clearly, it's a possibility we could see. That's just them speculating on the podcast, though. We don't have any information to suggest that Oshie's definitely going to be made available. He also touched on James Van Riemsdyk in Philadelphia as well as being another player that Hakstol might like to have on the team. And I'm sure he'll be giving some input, but ultimately Francis and a lot of his scouting department and analytical people will be making more of those decisions, I would think. But obviously giving Hakstol a bit of a voice at the table. Now, of course, the other big thing I want to talk about today is Vegas and what they're going to do to react to this loss. Now, there's already a lot of chatter amongst NHL reporters and insiders about what they might do. It was brought up again on the Elliot Friedman podcast today. Will they jump into the Eichel sweepstakes? Clearly, if you look at this team and how the roster is constructed, they have two great goaltenders, they have a really solid blue line, and they spent all their money in the forward group on the wings, and they don't really have the center depth. I mean, you're looking at William Karlsson, to me, is probably their best center, but he's ideally a number 2. You've had Chandler Stevenson playing the role of a 1C, and I'm sorry, no disrespect, but he is not a 1C. He's going to be a bottom 6 center on most teams. He's certainly got some good qualities to him. I'm not saying he's a bad hockey player. He's not. He would be a good fit on a lot of teams. He's a great skater, good speed, decent defensively. He does fit well with Stone and Pacioretty compared to most of the other centers on that team. But certainly, if you look at most of the teams that have been successful in recent years, and going way back really, because it's no big surprise that the center position, to me, is way more important than the wings. Wingers are easier to kind of build around and kind of mix in there, whereas the center spot is that much more of a two-way game, ends to both ends of the ice, and certainly has a bigger impact on how successful a team can be. This is the same as the goaltending and the blue line. You can make an argument that you need a little bit of all those before you need the wingers, but Vegas has constructed their team a little bit differently, and I understand they had an opportunity to take advantage of to get some real solid high-end wingers like Stone, Pacioretty, etc. Of course, they signed guys like Marchessault and Smith to fairly decent-sized contracts after they had their breakout year in year 1 after the expansion draft. But, the center position to me is the big hole on this team. You've got a solid blue line, solid goaltending, solid wingers, but you need help down the middle. I mean, Nikolai Waugh, another decent center, but ideally probably like a number 3. Thomas Nosek's like a 3-4. Waugh's like a 3-4. The guy you can kind of put in your bottom 6, but you can also jump him up in the lineup, on occasion if he's having a hot night or there's an injury or something to that effect. But they just really are missing that stud center. And we know a couple things about Vegas. We know that they're likely going to overreact because their owner, Bill Foley, absolutely wants to win at all costs. And they've gone out and done it every other offseason. Like, they've gone out and made significant moves. We saw the Pietrangelo acquisition, the Stone acquisition, the Pacioretty acquisition. This team wants to win. They want a cup as soon as possible. They've had 4 years in the league, made the playoffs every year, one Stanley Cup final appearance. The other 2 out of the 3 years they lost in the semifinals, like in the conference finals. And, of course, they had one earlier exit, and that was the one blip on the radar here. So, to me, I would not be one bit surprised if they jump into the Eichel sweepstakes. They likely are going to have to move a goaltender to create the necessary cap room. They only have like $6 million, and they have a handful of players without contracts on their books now. So, you have to think about Fleury's time in Vegas. I know Bill Foley, the owner, loves Fleury. And to me, maybe they don't ever trade him, but that's a $7 million cap hit when you get Robin Leonard signed long-term at 5 and change. So, to me, there's a good chance Fleury goes. He almost went last offseason. Pittsburgh was real close to bringing him back home. So, to me, that's something that could possibly be revisited, or other teams as well. And then, of course, up front, you've got looking at the center spot. So Fleury doesn't necessarily go in an Eichel trade. I think that would be separate to create some space. But in an Eichel trade, you're looking at probably including a decent forward. Maybe it's a Riley Smith or Jonathan Marchessault. And then, of course, you're looking at a young player. Maybe they could go for like Cody Glass or Peyton Krebs. You get some picks that you could throw in there as well. I'm not sure. I mean, Alec Martinez likely doesn't come back. He's a UFA, so you're going to get a little bit of room there. And that's a real possibility. Now, will they be able to contend with some of the other teams on an Eichel trade? It's going to be challenging because they don't have that futures-based package that some of the teams could offer. So it really boils down to what Buffalo wants. But if they want more young studs, like outside of Glass and Krebs, there's not a lot there, unless they're willing to throw in maybe one of their younger defensemen, like a White Cloud or a Haig or something to that effect. But still, like, they're good quality players, but I'm not sure there's really like a stud prospect in there that's going to be, a high level. I guess only time will tell. Cody Glass has not gone to the level that we've expected so far. So, I mean, they don't have much on this team. The only player on their roster that they've drafted is Nicholas Hague. He's the only player that played last night that came from the entry draft. So time will tell, but to me, Vegas needs that 1C, whether or not it's Eichel or Evgeny Kuznetsov. I don't think Sean Monahan would be the guy, but of course, he's better than some of the guys they have, so I don't know what they're going to do, but I can see that being the glaring need to me that needs to be addressed. And there's already hockey insiders talking about the fact that they would not be one bit surprised to see them jump in and make a bold move, because that's what Vegas has done their entire existence here so far. So do you see a possibility of Vegas getting into the Jack Eichel sweepstakes? Do you think they could pull it off? Give me your mock trades down in the comments below and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.